So good morning, everybody so far who's here. I'm Phyllis, as you know, and I'm gonna read through our information that we start the meeting with, and then I'll have you all introduce yourselves. Eracism is the slogan of the group Erace, which was formed in New Orleans in the summer of 1993. We seek ways through person-to-person communication to show that we are committed to treating all human beings with love, respect, empathy, compassion, and humility. Join us. Erace is an organization that does not espouse any political party, and we have no religious affiliation. We believe in acceptance of all people, and no personal attacks of any kind will be tolerated. We come with the intention to listen, learn, and not to argue. We begin today by acknowledging that what we know as the United States is the ancestral and unceded territory of many indigenous peoples, and that there are many more nations and tribes that could be named here. Members of our meeting group today are on the lands of the Chitimacha and Choctaw in New Orleans, the Creeks and Cherokees in Atlanta, the Tonkawan, Lipan Apache, and Comanche in Austin, the Lenape and Piscataway in Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc peoples in Boston, the Coahuila and Mojave in Riverside, and the Lumbee in Fayetteville. We thank their ancestors for being stewards of these lands through the generations and through today. Somebody needs in. We need to protect and honor the history and people of these places. Despite centuries of colonial theft and violence, we should always remember that we are all still on indigenous land, and it will always be indigenous land. So as you all know, I will keep a running list. If you want to get on the list, you raise one finger. If you want to ask a clarifying question of the current speaker, you put up two fingers. Each time you're on the list, you get 2 minutes to speak. Two clarifying questions per speaker each time. We ask that everybody keeps muted unless they're unmuting to speak because they're next. A clarifying question is not a rebuttal of what the person is saying, but it's to clarify a word or a term, or maybe something you weren't sure you heard correctly. It shouldn't involve any sort of a preamble. If it turns to it's something you really want to say, you'll be invited to get on the list. I think those are the big things. So I'll call on you to introduce yourselves. Nancy?
Good morning. I'm Nancy. I've been coming to Erace since June of 2007, and I'm in the New Orleans area.
Beatrice?
Hi, good morning. I've been coming to Erace since about 93, 94 when I lived in New Orleans, and now I live in East Point, Georgia. Glad to be here.
Marla?
Good morning. My name is Marla. I am in the New Orleans area. I've been coming to Erace since 2019.
Teresa?
I'm Teresa. I am in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I've been coming since 2022.
Glenn?
My name is Glenn Abdullah, and I've been coming to Erace since 1994.
Great. So I chose this article because it is Native American History Month in November, which is appropriate since we have Thanksgiving in November, where there's a lot of rubbish as historical tradition. And I just thought this was a really informational and educational article about how Native American peoples governed themselves, which I certainly never learned a lot about in school. And if I did, it was probably not true. So that's all I'll say for now. I hope people had a chance, since I posted it on Monday, to read it, maybe look up some of the the place that really, I almost did an article solely about the place in Illinois, Indiana, Cahokia. I almost just did an article about that place. It was so interesting. And I'd never heard of it before. So with that, I'm going to open the list. Anybody wants to start? Marla?
Yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. And like you, I had no idea. It just goes to show all of the things that were omitted that we should have been taught, or how things were completely misconstrued in what we were taught. I just wanted to say my favorite line of this whole article is right before the section, calm deliberation. And it's the second to the last sentence, or two sentences. Power and prestige came to lie not in amassing wealth, but in assuring that the wealth was shared wisely. Leaders earned support in part by being good providers. What a concept. That just like blew me out of the water. And it's not anything unusual or outlandish. And then the parts about speaking to each other in calm voices. Anyway, I really, I love this. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. So that's it for now.
Thank you. Who's next? I saw a finger, Beatrice. You did that. Nancy, go ahead.
Um, I had, God, I can't even talk. I had read about, I get these little um, posts on Facebook from, I don't know, I think they're two brothers or two cousins, Native American guys that post facts about Native American people and Native American history and Native American genealogy and things like that. Um, anyway, so I knew about the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution being based on the Iroquois nations confederation or whatever. And how when the colonizers came over and they, you know, learned learned they got ideas how to set up their new place of settlement, I guess. Their country or whatever they were attempting to do initially when they got here. And a lot of their ideas came, from the Native Americans. And then I don't know, to me it gets kind of depressing because they just took it and claimed it as their own and just totally left the Native Americans out of it, didn't give them any credit at all. And so I don't find that uh I don't know. It's a weird feeling for me. And plus I don't feel good, but that's here or there. Okay, I'm done for right now.
Thank you. Glenn?
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Phyllis. I'm driving, but I would like to get on the list.
Okay, I'll put you after Glenn.
Thank you.
Mhm. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, well, I don't believe that our Constitution was based upon a lot what the Indians had going on. That we came over here clueless what to do.
Yeah.
Well, somebody interrupting? Got something to say? What? What's happening? Mute your phone.
There's nobody talking.
Oh, excuse me. I'm hearing things. All right. So I don't believe that they got They come over here, they were looking for guidance, and they found it among the Iroquois. Now, they already had a good idea of what they was going to form. They uh, they already had a two-party system in England where they came from. Already had a parliament. All those things were already set up for their understanding. They also uh, studied uh, Islamic Spain, where the government had freedom of religion. Uh, every everybody had a part in the government: the Christians, the Jews, the Muslims, and they uh, they looked at that system also. Uh, so it to put it that these people came over here dumb and they had no idea of how to form a government, so they went and studied among the Indians. That's ridiculous. Talk to you later.
Okay, I've got Teresa and then Beatrice. And then Nancy.
Thank you. Once again, I'm so happy I'm following Glenn because I was going to recommend a book and I'll get the exact title when I get home. But it's called like The Indigenous People's Guide to American History, where it did state with all the receipts about how the colonizers based their state constitutions on Native American constitutions, because as most of us should know by now, indigenous Americans were not savages, they were sovereign nations. And they already had in place. I mean, I always say in retrospect, indigenous populations messed up not by being the example of how colonizers can organize their state constitutions, but showing them how to grow corn. That's where they messed up. Anyway, the I highly recommend that book because that one was one that I also recently finished. And so it's kind of serendipitous, Phyllis, that we were on the same wavelength, because the two books that I had been, one I was reading, the other one I was listening to, has to do with the history of the United States Constitution. And even that long 24-hour Jill Lepore audiobook also talks about how the state constitutions before we were the United States were based on indigenous populations. So that's just two books that I recently read that kind of debunk your theory, Glenn. And I'm not to say that the colonizers came over clueless. Most definitely they had an idea of what they wanted to do, but they also used Native American constitutions as an example, as a template. Not that they came clueless, but a template. I think my 2 minutes are probably up.
I forgot about
You forgot about timing me. Yay.
I forgot
love
about
that.
timing anybody.
I know we're just disciplined to stop talking around.
Well,
Although I think I probably stopped talking around 4 minutes, but you know.
I don't even know. I'm used to Louise being here and I forgot she wasn't. So okay, thanks.
Gotcha.
And, drive carefully. Beatrice, you're next. And then Nancy.
There is so much here that is so informative, and as others have said, so much that we never learned. I have always been felt great loss that the colonizers did not learn from the native peoples who had protected the earth for thousands of years, who saw the earth as their mother, who made plans for 7 generations like the Iroquois. So there was one line in almost the last paragraph that says, leaders looked ahead and sought to protect the well-being of every person. What an idea. What an idea. Even those not yet born. The way that colonizers looked upon the indigenous people as pagans, somebody to be conquered, somebody to given religion, and destroying culture, destroying the land, destroying their own future, our own future. There's a Mexican proverb that says, "We do not inherit the land from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children." And so that is what we're doing now, because we did not learn. And yes, the Constitution, there's documentation, there are the receipts that Teresa's talking about, did come from the Iroquois. But this was filled with so much. I just always lament the fact that the colonizers went so wrong. I mean, they destroyed the buffalo for nothing, not for all the uses that the native people did. Aside from not learning by the way they organized their lives, but by the way they used nature. They didn't learn. They didn't learn. And so we have continued to destroy Mother Earth and try to destroy the indigenous people.
Okay, thank you. We got Nancy next and then Glenn.
Okay. Initially kind of just started talking because, no one had put their hand up and I didn't expect all of this so soon and so early in the discussion. But I have read several times that the U.S. Constitution, the initial founding fathers stole whatever they could and used it for their own good and advancement. So why not take parts of the Iroquois nation's governing plan and use it for their own? They stole everything else. And for you to say, oh, we didn't come over here clueless. Your ancestors came over here on the Mayflower. Also, when the pilgrims came over on the Mayflower, they were escaping, supposedly. Who knows what their original intent was, because so many things have been manipulated and twisted over the years that you don't even know what to believe anymore. They've been lied to you so much. Escape for religious freedom, what was supposed to be, so they could have religious freedom and practice their religion, without being persecuted. That was the reason, supposedly the reason why they came over here and whatnot. Who knows what the actual reason was? But I don't think they came over here with a plan. If you're escaping persecution, you're just trying to get away from what's harming you. You don't even really have a plan of what you're going to do when you get to where you're going. Similar to people coming up from Central America. They're just trying to get to the United States. They get here, and when we get across the border, we'll figure out what we're going to do. Okay, so I don't think they had a plan. As more people began to come over here, and they began to center around either, farming and what other agricultural activities they had going on, they began to think about governing. And as the European nations of England, France, Spain, or whatever started, we're going to take this part, we're going to take that part. And they started thinking, oh, maybe we ought to have some, design to this, and started, forming, governments, or some semblance of governance as time went on. I'm probably over 2 minutes, so I'll just stop talking because I know Glenn going to respond, and I'll probably get back on the list.
Okay, let me know. Glenn, you are next.
Yeah, you better get with that clock because she took too many minutes.
That's okay, Glenn. I'm not going to time you either.
All right. Okay. Just because something's in a book, that don't make it the Holy Grail because it's in the book. Look how many books of history that we had in school that was false. And just because if somebody wrote something about the Indian, it's got to be the absolute truth. The people who came over here, they knew what they wanted, and they were very enlightened people. Uh, Thomas Jefferson was no dummy. Benjamin Franklin was no dummy. They didn't have to. These people were much more enlightened than the Indians were. They didn't go to their. They didn't go to the University of the Iroquois to learn from them. They were men of great enlightenment. They wrote the Constitution not based on the Iroquois. The Iroquois didn't have in there uh, um, uh, what we have in our Constitution. Name what the Iroquois had in there, what we got in our constitutions. Name it. All right, I'll leave it there.
Marla has a clarifying question, and I'm putting Teresa on the list.
Okay, cut me off if it's not clarifying. I'm not trying to be, I'm just trying to understand.
It's not clarified already. You
No, no, no.
disqualified. It ain't
I'm trying to
clarified.
understand. Are you defending the colonizers?
Uh, not everything that they did, of course not. But I think it was a great thing for humanity for the Constitution of the United States to be written.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa, you're next, and the list is open. Beatrice. Teresa?
Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yep, we
You
can.
you called on me when I had a load of laundry in my arms, so sorry about that. I was like, timing. Okay, so you talked about Thomas Jefferson and I'm talking about when colonizers first came over in the 1600s. So they nearly died. You're talking about the great men of the colonies. I'm talking about the pioneers, the initial ones. They nearly died. They had no idea in this strange land how to even survive. So I think it's really interesting that you're not going back to when they initially came over, which is when they had to set things up. And as far as the United States Constitution that you're talking about, wasn't that around the 1700s, not the 16? I mean, I even go back to that popular 1619. So between 1619 and 1776, that's a lot of time. It's a lot of time. I hope we can agree that they did not come over with a constitution because they were colonizers. They were still part of England. That whole debate about this, that, and the other was after the Independence War. So let's get our time, like let's agree on what time frame that we're talking about. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Teresa. Beatrice, you're next.
I'm looking at the section on an ideal of leadership, and I know that it's almost dreamlike, but in many societies, they talk about people, men, women, and children for major political, military, diplomatic, and land use decisions. Hundreds or even thousands might show up, depending on how momentous the decision was. And then they strove for consensus. The part I'm looking at is women, men, and children making major decisions. I always think about war, and whenever countries go into war, would it not be good that the women and the children were sitting at those tables where those decisions are made? Because the people that suffer the most from wars that are gotten into by decisions of men, for the most part, are the women and the children. If decisions were broadly made by groups other than just warmongering people who see the only way to decide things is to destroy something, would not things have been better? So these people would sit down and talk with all of this, sometimes thousands of people, until there was consensus. And even the writing says that the people who didn't agree, didn't find that they could find consensus, would sometimes leave. And they always spoke calmly to one another. It is almost unbelievable that human beings acted that way, but they did, and they had been doing it for thousands of years. There's an African, I think it's, I'm saying Dogon, I may be wrong, but they used to discuss things in a place where nobody could stand up. In other words, the building itself had a very low ceiling, so that nobody could stand up and argue and overpower somebody by their words and by their, standing up and being aggressive. So there's just so much we could have learned. It may not be too late, but I fear that it may be. But there's so much here that I think is enlightening and could have been so helpful to our having a better country.
Thank you, Beatrice. The list is open. So I'm going to interject a little bit.
I had my finger up, my hand up, but you didn't see it. I normally put it up, then I put it down
Oh,
after I figured
okay,
that you saw it.
go ahead.
Yeah,
I didn't see it.
yeah, but I'm gonna come after you. I'm gonna see what you interject because I might have to correct you. Go ahead.
Glenn, you will not be correcting me. So from 1619 to 1776 is about 157 years. If we think about the history of the colonies of the United States, we read about a lot of really backward stuff. And I say this as somebody who has an ancestor who came here in the 1640s. The original people fleeing persecution didn't really have it in their minds that they were going to create a persecution-free country. They just wanted security for themselves. Thomas Jefferson was born in Virginia in 1743 and Ben Franklin in 1706 in Boston. They didn't come here. I'm sure it is, well, I know it's impossible to live among people and not pick up something about their way of doing things. So I think to go along with Marla's clarifying question, Glenn, you seem to not just stand up for the colonizers, but identify with them, like defend slave owners and people who did so much damage, not only to the people who were here prior to white people, but the land itself. I think you should take in mind to read some of these books. Maybe they won't convince you, but at least you'll have that information. Okay, Glenn, you're next. Welcome them all.
Thank you.
You know, first of all, my ancestors came here in the 1600s before yours did. Uh, the Now that was an interesting fact that Teresa brought up about the time when they first come here. All right, but I thought I was reading that how they affect our Constitution, what they did. With that's what the seemed like that was the theme of this subject. Not not when they came here, not the timeline when they came here, is how our Constitution is formed around what the Iroquois nation gave us. Uh, so that's what I'm speaking to. That is, I don't see where in our Constitution we got what we learned from the Iroquois. Let me know what part of the Constitution is with the Iroquois influence. Thank you.
Teresa, you're up.
There were colony constitutions before there was US constitutions. And every state has a constitution too. So I think maybe that is part of the ambiguity of the word constitution, not putting the adjective upon which constitution you're talking about. So that may be where the disconnect comes in. Oh, thank you. I'm done.
Who wants to go next?
Well, I say I have a few words. Uh, well, Teresa could have been a lawyer because with her intelligence, she's able to make the truth look like a lie. Uh, the uh, we are we are talking about the United States
I
Constitution.
want to call point of order.
What you call for or what?
Insulting Teresa.
No, that was a
No,
compliment.
that was a backhanded compliment. That's all. That's called an insult. So just so you know, carry on.
I sound like we in court.
Overruled.
Okay. Uh, yeah. That's we are talking about the United States Constitution. We ain't talking about you know with every little 13 colony had, and which was a problem because everybody had their own little constitution. Everybody had their own. They printed their own money and all that other stuff they were doing back there, where nothing but confusion was. Uh, but just like most Americans today see that the Constitution is being taken away, and they are dreadful of it. They're fighting to keep the Constitution that Thomas Jefferson and the others wrote for us to live by. And I mean, y'all have all kind of little backhand insults saying I'm supporting slavery and all that other stuff. That you should call part of order on some of that crap that y'all be saying about me, because it's all nonsense. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Glenn. The list is open. Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Oh, Nancy's coughing. Amal, do you want to jump in?
Sure, I'll jump in. No problem. You know, there were a lot of things that the United States, that the European colonies, I should say, um, adopted from Native Americans that they will not or do not give them credit for. And when you look at the United States Constitution, it actually doesn't even mention the Native Americans in it in no way, form, or fashion. Like they're not even a byword. So it doesn't really matter whether you feel like they did or didn't adopt anything constitutionally from the Native Americans. The bottom line is they didn't include them. And in not including them, they were able to treat them as less than human beings or less than the people of these lands. And that's what continues to happen to this day. You see the um the 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 degradation of Native Americans, their culture, their land, consistently every day throughout the United States. And it's an ongoing fight, a 500-year-old fight, plus 500 plus year old fight. So that idea that the Europeans just came here and they were so intelligent, they were able to adopt a constitution on their own. Like who really buys that? I don't. But if you choose to, then go for yours.
Thank you, Amal. The list is open again. Nancy?
when the colonizers like came here, um, it was a new land. The climate was different, the seasons were different, the soil was different. And so they had to learn from the Native Americans, how to live here. Because when they came, they didn't know what they were coming to. They just wanted to escape persecution. So they get over here and they don't understand how the climate works over here, what will grow over here, what you need to sustain themselves. And what Native Americans don't get credit for, and that I read in my little posts on Facebook and whatnot, is they taught the colonizers crop rotations. They taught them what will grow in what kind of soil, and also companion crops, what to grow together at the same time to get the best use of the soil that was here that they weren't used to. They also, and I would love to go see these in the Southwest, the pueblos, the apartment buildings. The concept of apartment buildings came from the Native Americans in the Southwest of of what came to be the United States. The pueblos built multi-unit dwellings. And so there's a lot of concepts that, oh, that looks like a good idea. Let us use it. From Native Americans, and I just, feel that I in watching these posts and whatnot, you really just how overlooked their contributions of Native Americans and any other minority group that was here or came here, and it was just overlooked, taken over by the colonizers and completely overlooked or stolen from their culture and their civilization. Okay, I've said enough.
Thank you. Glenn is next, and the list is open.
First of all, the subject is not on the environment. What we learned from the Indians of how to live in the North American environment. That is not what the subject is on. The subject is on how much was the Constitution of emphasizing the United States. That's what the subject is on, how they influence. And yes, they do. History does acknowledge what the Indian did for the colonists, or I wouldn't know about it. I know about it. I know about they didn't know how to grow food in the area that they were at, Plymouth Rock area, because it was mostly sand. And the Indians had to tell them how to use dead fish to fertilize the ground so they could grow. Uh, America is not a country that don't acknowledge who they learned things from. In America, is always learning things from immigrants. It's a constant thing. And human beings, just period, learn from one another. They learned from the slave that came here how to grow rice. They learned different, you know, uh, the way America is inviting all these different ethnic groups, which made America so powerful because of how they learned from one another. And in the Constitution, uh, the French aren't named, the Germans aren't named, uh, the Italians aren't named in the Constitution. Nobody's name is mentioned. No group name is mentioned. Okay, that's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Glenn. Who's next?
Hi, is the list open?
It's open.
Okay. I'm on Zoom call, Mom. Sorry about that, y'all. Um, did I hear correctly, Glenn, saying that there's no mention of anything being I mean, I think I did hear this because I was trying to help my mother, but I was kind of laughing. I was just like, since when do the patriarchs include other people who aren't white men and originally land owning white men? When do they ever give anyone else credit? That's kind of like my open question. And is it really your expectation that if they didn't document the source, then that didn't happen? Because I think, and I'm just going to go out on a limb, I think every woman on this call who has ever held a job and has made an interesting or innovative suggestion only to have a man repeat it and they get uptake, no, we don't get credit. And we're in the room saying our words and having it repeated, and credit is just being given to the man who repeated it. And then he doesn't say, oh, thanks to Marla who point that out. I'm just elevating her idea. Were you really expecting the patriarchs to give credit to somebody who wasn't a land-owning white man? I mean, that to me is really incredulous. I don't ever see, even in my
Yeah.
lifetime, that men will give credit for the ideas they stole and won't even say that they stole it. No, that was just all me. No, it wasn't. That wasn't just all you. You didn't know about that. So that's really interesting that that's your expectation, that there'll be some, footnotes of, yay, we borrowed this from the Native Americans, and oh, it was this illiterate slave who was really good at engineering. We just made it illegal for them to study, and learn how to read so they could really expand your mind. I always say that the cure for cancer is locked in some illiterate person's head, and they're working, something like they don't have the resources to really cultivate their minds. And I don't see the colonizers or the enslavers as being anything but successful, violent people who used resources and violence. They weaponized violence as a resource to suppress other people from greatness. I mean, they've had better weapons. That's just the history of the world. They've had better weapons, more motivated to hurt another human being, even reclassify a human being as less than. I mean, how often have you read about, oh, well, we had to conquer the savages, and as if had no culture, they had no organization, they were just waiting for Europeans to come along. And the only thing that really, and the savagery that the colonizers use is never contextualized as savagery. It's never the brutality. It's always, oh, they conquered and they did this. No, they waged war against their fellow human being without even having consequences of doing so. And I just want to point out, I would love to hear Nancy's impression of looking at the ancestral wall in Ghana, because I started looking up those people's names who I haven't didn't recognize. Vast majority on that wall are different people from around the world who stood up to colonizers. That's the common thread of those people on the wall. Very common thread. I'm halfway done with that, by the way.
Thank you, Teresa. That was very well said. Almost a sermon.
You know how I love
In
to
a good
rant,
way.
so.
In a good way. Okay, the list is open.
You keep us don't. I thought you
Sorry.
saw my name. I thought you saw my
Oh,
my hand up.
I did, and I wrote your name down and crossed it out. Okay, Glenn, you go, and then Nancy.
Well,
Anybody
that's
else?
natural for you. Yeah.
Oh, Glenn, it's okay. I'm not trying to make your life hard.
Okay. Now let me get my thoughts back together. Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to say. They have had black women have taken my ideas and took credit for it. They have had black men taking credit for me and taking taking credit for it. That's just human nature, you know. And it's not uh, uh, just for a colonizer to do those things. And most people are decent. It's the few at the top who manipulate the masses into doing evil things. You had black men went to Vietnam and killed Vietnamese who were only wanted freedom to govern themselves and not be colonized by America, France, or others. We went there and killed those people because we were brainwashed into thinking we were fighting to save our country from these people hurting us or protecting ourselves from communism. People get manipulated. It's a very small minority, and they're the ones who enrich themselves. They're getting ready to go into Guatemala, trying to get the American people to believe that not Guatemala, Venezuela, go into Venezuela, thinking that these people are the cause is attacking America with drugs, and we got a war on drugs, and trying to get the people to get their hearts behind going in there and killing Guatemalans, Venezuelans. So you're putting a whole group into something where there really been people at the top who get you to believing and getting behind something that is corrupt. Uh, Something else. Yes. Uh, I watch documentaries, and I know a lot about history through looking at documentaries. And the documentaries aren't given to me by African Americans. And I think most of what y'all have is not that it came from African Americans. Your thing on history, and then the African Americans are sometimes using what they got uh from what they got from with that where they put everything in Washington D.C., the Library of Congress. Yeah, a lot of them go get the information that people who could write during the time the slave couldn't write during the time of slavery. What went on? But there were whites who were writing down the history, what went on. All right, that's enough food for thought.
Thank you, Glenn. Nancy, you're next, and the list is open.
I forgot what I was gonna say. I'll just say whatever I got for the wrap up. I'm sorry.
Well, it's only 10:56, so no.
It's probably was a good thing you forgot for my sake. You forgot it.
Glenn, uh, I don't, I don't know what. I'm too sick
Okay.
to my brain's not working. It's just not. I can't deal with it.
Okay.
Can I
Yep.
get on? All right. I am still running around here, but the author of the book My Grandmother's Hands, he wrote a second book, which I have to look up when I get a chance and put it in the chat. But he basically said for that book, that second book, that what the colonizers experienced as far as persecution and what was done to them, the brutality, is what they brought to this continent. And they did it on others. And basically, it was a running thread of him saying what was done to them, they did to others. They did that to themselves first. They suffered through that themselves, and that's what they did to others. So look at the legacy of trauma and brutality. So once I sit down and get a moment, I'm going to put all 3 books that I've recommended in the chat. Thanks.
Is the list open?
It is. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the book.
Okay. I want to, so as it relates to the Constitution, when I said that the Native American wasn't mentioned in there, um, and then Glenn was talking about the Italians and the Chinese and so on and so forth. You're right; they weren't mentioned either. The the point that I was making by saying that the Native Americans wasn't mentioned is because they're native to this land. Those other people you mentioned were not native to this land. So if you're going to draft the Constitution, you could at least talk about the people who were here when you got here. But that wasn't done. Nowhere the European went did they have an acknowledgement of the native peoples who were there. I think in Australia, they didn't even mention the Aboriginal people of Australia as human beings until like the 1960s or somewhere coming into the 70s as human beings. Nevertheless, the native peoples of the land as human beings. So this wasn't just in the United States. This was everywhere the European went outside of Europe, where they did not respect or acknowledge the native populations there in or their creativity, the things that they already had going on. I.e., these people had ideas of what family meant, what civilizations meant, what society meant. The Europeans didn't give them that because they had civilizations and societies set up already when the European got here. So that was the point I was making by saying that they didn't mention them in the Constitution. They're native to this land, indigenous to this land. Those other people you mentioned came later, and even when they got here, they weren't acknowledged.
Thank you, Amal. List is open. Bye, Beatrice. Break a leg. Beatrice is off to give a talk. Okay, the list is open. Well, do we want to go into the wrap up? No objection.
You have to say something to make the conversation spark conversation, make it more. I could say something that could be real controversial, but I don't know if I would believe it 100% in my heart if I said it. So
Yeah, we already got somebody who does that.
I could say something, make it very just to spark the conversation. So you bought the article. So what was the motivation for that?
Well, I started looking for articles that would be more educational than controversial. I forgot who we're dealing with. But even this could be controversial. And I did find one I said earlier about the city Cahokia that I'd never heard of before. And I'm not sure this article is trying to make an argument that the people who wrote the Constitution fully used Native American ideas. I think they picked and choose which ones they thought were good. For instance, they had a council, the Iroquois did, and each council member who went to the meetings to make decisions was chosen by a clan mother. So the people who went, I don't know if they were all male. No, it says they were. Men were representatives of their clans and nations in the council. Each council member was chosen by a clan mother. So, I'm just thinking back when I think it was Abigail Adams during the writing the Constitution encouraged her husband to remember the ladies. Yeah, he didn't. They didn't. So that to me was like a loss because, and it's a loss to this day that we don't have people being chosen for leadership really based on their it has the proof against anger, offensive actions, and criticism, and their hearts shall be full of peace and goodwill. We don't have people like that, for the most part, running our government. So, but yeah, I think there's a lot we can learn. I did see an article that was more South American Native people and the kind of infrastructure they built, like sewage systems to take things away from where they lived so that they didn't get, diseased. So I don't know if anybody wants to get on the list or we should just do the wrap up.
Now I'll build on what you was just talking about.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people ignore. It's almost like the Europeans came to barren land. Nobody was here. It wasn't that serious. I heard, damn, and I feel, I feel some kind of way bringing his name up, considering what happened to him, Charlie Kirk, and um, when he would go on his college tours, and someone brought up the fact that the Europeans when they came were colonizers. They said no, they weren't colonizers; they were settlers. There's a difference. And it's like, okay, is that a play on words, or do you really believe that there's a difference between being a settler and being a colonizer? If you go somewhere where there's somebody and you try to set up shop on their land, that's colonizing. That's not settling. Settling is when you go where there is nobody. But him and there's another guy on the scene now. Nick Fuentes is a quite interesting guy when he talks about there was no the way he worded is sub-Saharan Africans didn't have a written language and they didn't even know what a will was until the European got there and taught them. So when you have that, so this is the European rhetoric about peoples outside of Europe that until the European came, y'all lived like this. Our presence is what made y'all more humane and less savage. And so that mentality is a mentality that continues on. And until you can kill that, you're going to have people not believing or not feeling like the Native American can make a contribution to the Constitution because, after all, they didn't have complex societies where they would need to live in harmony with one another. And that's been the mentality since 1492.
Thank you, Amal. Anybody want to respond or give your own thoughts? Oh, Nancy, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Well, just giving my own thoughts and reading this article most recently, it just goes along with a lot of stuff. Like I said, get these posts on Facebook from um, Native American organ. I don't know. I don't even look to see who's posting it, but it's these two guys. They give you little Native American facts. Um, and I thought more recently, I've been seeing more and more and more about the contributions of Native Americans to this country. So when I read this article and saw that that's what this was about, it felt good that we're recognizing Native Americans. And in response to Teresa's question about me seeing the wall in Africa, I don't remember seeing that. But there groups have come to the United States and made contributions in all kinds of different areas. And I get a lot of stuff like that on Facebook. Oh, I know what I was going to say. When I was in Africa and I looked at how the people lived in Africa, it kind of made me have to check myself and my own values and whatnot. To me, I might have looked at it and said, oh, this is an underdeveloped country. But that was my standards. They may think that they're living fine. And I think sometimes you have to kind of step back and realize that not everybody lives or has the same values and the same standards that you do. It doesn't mean that just because they don't live up to the standards that you have doesn't mean that they're not living well. Because they may be living in peace and harmony. It just doesn't look like peace and harmony to you. And so I think everyone just needs to sometimes take a step back, you know, and reevaluate your own standards and motives and things like that. That's it.
Thank you, Nancy. Anybody else?
Glenn, where's your hand?
Oh, you didn't say nothing I didn't like.
Well, Nancy, you have to do better next time.
Oh my God.
That's just humor. That's all that is. Just humor. Don't take it personal. Uh, look, since we on with some of the contributions of the Native Americans, uh, we learned how to make controlled burns of the forest. Native Americans used to do that long before we came here to keep the flow of the forest from overgrowth and where so other animals could come in and flourish. Uh, it's uh, I'm sure they had different herb medicines that they use, and the uh, the when the Europeans came here, when they got out on the prairie, this is long after 1600. When they got out into the prairie area, they didn't know how to furrow the ground. They would dig down too deep and ruin the earth. Yeah. Uh, so uh, yeah, if you live in an environment for centuries, you're gonna learn things about the environment. That other people who just come there is not going to learn. They're not going to learn it right. It took centuries for people to learn that. But now, but the Europeans come here and they were able to find many more usage out of the earth than the Indians could possibly have been able to do to advance mankind, to make life more easy for mankind. They so uh, it's not it is not all a uh, that there was no benefit in the European coming here. There's a big benefit in the European coming here. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, let me ask you a clarifying question as it relates to what Glenn just said. Um, you said that the Europeans was able to get stuff out of the land that the Native Americans wasn't. Did I hear that right?
Right.
Could you give me some examples of those things?
Uh, they are able to find many uses for petroleum, many uses for coal, many uses for the buffalo, besides just the hide and the meat. They use the bone of the buffalo. You know, they uh they uh, uh they develop farming agricultural skills that were able to feed many millions of people. Where the Indians sometimes, they were having hard time making ends meet. Uh, Too dependent on the buffalo, and and so and then being a nomadic people could not stay in one place to sustain themselves. They were nomadic. Uh, we don't have to be nomadic anymore. We don't have to live off of wild game anymore. Uh, we learned the uh, horticulture and brought it to a high level. Systems that enhance the human life. That's. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go into the wrap up. Nancy, you want to go first?
All right. Well, this led to a very interesting discussion. Um, I'm always interested in things about the Native American people, their customs, their culture, what they had, what happened to them, where they are now. And, anytime there's any kind of documentary on Native Americans, I like to watch that. But anyway, very good discussion today. Brought out a lot of stuff. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nancy. Marla?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this article. I just mostly enjoyed listening to the whole discussion. One thing I have been thinking about lately too is, in light of the myth of Thanksgiving coming up here in a couple weeks, you can do a quick Google search to look up indigenous brands that can be supported. And I would encourage folks to do that. There are some phenomenal food brands that are 100% indigenous owned that would help with upliftment now and always. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Amal?
Yeah, great article. I too like Nancy is always fascinated by Native American culture and the people. Not solely relying on what I got in my public school miseducation. Always try to step outside of that and find information that you wouldn't otherwise get, because if I relied on the public school to educate me about who and what the Native American is, it would start with things taken rather. So I always have to step outside of the box and find an opportunity to realize that these was a highly advanced and civilized people. And when I say Native American, I'm not just talking about Native North Americans. I'm talking about from the northernmost tip of Canada to the southernmost tip of South America and everything in between. When I say Native Americans, though, that's what I mean. And so, there are pyramids in Mexico that don't get talked about. There are pyramids in along the Mississippi River. A lot of people don't know that, don't get talked about, and who built them. So these people had very complex civilizations before the European came and disrupted their way of life. So yeah, great article though.
Thank you, Amal. Glenn?
I see you got that badge on you that you voted. Is this the last day for voting?
This is election day. Yep.
All right, thank you. I'm glad you wrote it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Yes, uh, America has it's two-faced. It shows you on one place the good face, then the other face it shows you that evil face. And but I think we'll work. It's a work in it's ongoing work that we live up to the to our creed, and uh, and I think that coming generations of young people are quite different than those just 60 years ago, or 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Uh, they're quite different. So the ants, the ants, they're not like their ancestors, and the they're going to vote for a better America in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Teresa?
All right, I am back. Thank you for this article, and I just want to say you tried and to do.
Thank you.
I do like that it combined a snippet of the Constitution along with indigenous. Like I said, I just recently read two books on the subject, so I appreciated that. And looking forward to our future discussions. Are we having, I know you're going to do it after all the wrap ups, but
Mhm.
if we're meeting in December at all,
We're
that's
meeting
what I was
December
going
6th, and that'll be the only December meeting.
to. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Was that all?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Um, okay, so some of the things that I had been writing down for my wrap up, I already said. But what Amal said about the different way people use colonizer versus settler was really interesting to me because I think so I think you said settler is somebody who goes to a place where there's no people. So in Israel, they like to use the word settler for the people that are taking over the land because their initial slogan when they were first forming in the late 40s was a people without a land for a land without a people. Well, we all know there were people on that land who were growing things and had civilization and yada yada. And when I went to Gaza in the early 90s and I spent some time in Jerusalem and I went to Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum there, they actually had a exhibit about how they got their independence. And I knew enough to be like, what? So they were pitching it like they became independent from the British, which is what we did. And I think that's a lot, that's part of the propaganda, which is also called Hasbara, which is how they try to sell, they try to link Israel and the United States so that more people here will be supportive. The question of the wheel coming up, the wheel isn't necessarily a standard of civilization. If you live in a place where wheel isn't going to be helpful to transport or goods or people, the wheel would be pointless. For instance, really rocky terrain. And Glenn, I'm sorry, you're very backwards about what you said about the buffalo because the Native Americans used the whole buffalo. The uh, white people who came here, there's a famous picture of just a pile of dead buffalo skinned that the white people just left piled up.
For
And
sport.
say again?
For sport.
For sport and to diminish the ability for Native Americans to have access to the buffalo. So it was twofold. So yeah, I think you should revisit everything you've been taught, Glenn, and read the books that Teresa is recommending, because she is a good reader and very smart. I mean a prolific reader and very smart. And I think you still have a lot to learn, and I'm confident that you can. So I'm going to stop the recording.